Hi, I want to introduce myself. My name is Tammy Berman. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I am a qualified parenting coordinator and a Supreme Court certified family mediator and a accredited collaborative professional facilitator. I'm the current president of the Collaborative Family Law Professionals of South Florida in Broward County, and very invested in helping people through the divorce process. And so I invited Anastasia. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself in a second, but I invited Anastasia to a conversation about my interest is just to help people through the divorce process. And so to that end, I invited Anastasia to have a conversation. So let me first have you introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anastasia Mahone. I am an attorney, first and foremost, a family law attorney. I'm also a guardian ad litem. I am a qualified parenting coordinator, a Florida Supreme Court certified family mediator, and I am also very dedicated to ensuring that families have the best outcomes in their divorce action, specifically children.
Got it. So when I was telling you before we started this video that, I've learned so much from guardian ad litems, and my interest is just to help people through the divorce process. And who better to know about all the pitfalls and to have seen the worst of the worst and have so many potentially life lessons from for people going through divorce from divorce has gone wrong, I guess, than a guardian ad litem. So I'm really thank you for taking the time to do this mini interview or discussion, or whatever we want to call it.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. So first and foremost, can you explain how would you explain the role of a guardian ad litem?
Sure. So a guardian ad litem is usually an attorney, if appointed by the court. Doesn't have to be an attorney, if done by agreement. A guardian ad litem is a person who represents a child's best interest in a family law action. Now, that is to be distinguished from an attorney ad litem, who represents the child's wishes, desires, wants, and what have you. So, for example, a guardian ad litem, in the role of a guardian ad litem, considers what the child or children want in the case. However, if that strays from what's in the child's best interest, the guardian ad litem's loyalty is to the child's best interest and makes recommendations based upon what is actually in the child's best interest. In order to do so, the guardian ad litem gets appointed by the court, by a court order, whether it's by agreement or during a hearing, the court chooses and selects a guardian ad litem. And the guardian ad litem typically has an investigation. They conduct an investigation where they speak to all of the people, the various people that have been involved in the child's life, whether it's personal witnesses to the child's upbringing, family members, professional witnesses, including the schools, doctors, so on and so forth. Also, they gather the documentation of, with regard to when the child's enrollment documents and report cards and things of that nature, review all of those things. And at the end of it, they type a report that's due a certain amount of days before it's to be presented in court. And that report details what everyone has said, as well as what the guardian ad litem's recommendations are, in accordance with what is in the best interest of the minor child, to be differentiated from what the child wants per se.
Right. Is the now in working with many attorneys over the years, I have to ask, is that term and determine like what is in the child's best interest a legal term? Like, is there a definition or guideposts in law regarding the child's best interest?
Sure. So yes, there are actually factors that are set forth in Florida Statute 6113, and it's about, I believe it's A through O. And so it goes anywhere from determining which parent is more likely to facilitate and foster the relationship with the other parent, which parent customarily undertakes parental responsibilities or is more likely to delegate to third parties, various things like that. One of them is also what the child desires, but combined, it's a combined picture. And the guardian ad litem looks at those items set forth, and there's also a catch-all, which is any other factor that the guardian ad litem or the court would deem relevant to for consideration.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm glad I asked that question. Because from a mental health standpoint, I would just, we may not have parameters, just what we have been trained to know about human development, but there's actually parameters set forth that you use. So that's good to know. So how, in terms of the background, like your background, can you give a little bit of your history on how you got into being a guardian ad litem, and I don't know what that history is been like for you?
Absolutely. So I majored in psychology in undergrad, and I knew that I wanted to help people. I do come from a family where there are many lawyers. So I was always sort of stuck between, do I go to law school? Do I become a forensic psychologist? And so I battled with that concept. I ended up going to law school. And then I had a sort of a knack for family law because it's real people, real issues, and it impacts families. And so I started off mostly in litigation, well, 100% litigation. And then ultimately, I started to realize that in practicing family law, when one is furthering adult agendas, at times children are being hurt by the very people who are charged with loving them and taking care of them. And when I started to realize the impact, this profound impact that litigation was having upon children. And of course, at that time as a litigator, I'm not having contact with the children. I'm looking at evidence or potential evidence and videos and things of that nature. I started to really want to be the voice for children that are in this situation where they have no control or no voice or no one going to bat for what it is that is in their best interest, despite what the parents may, other than what the parents may think and what their positions are.
So then you do a guardian ad litem training, which is, yeah.
So right. So any attorney in good standing is qualified to be a guardian ad litem per statute. Now, there are various training courses, one of which is Speak for Kids. I think that's what it's called, Speaking or Speak for Kids. And it's hosted by the Broward County Bar Association. So I took that course, and also Kim Nutter is the instructor. I took that course. And then in addition to that, I also took a course craft by Lisa Wentz. And in addition to that, you can also go and become trained as a guardian ad litem in dependency courts for free at the courthouse. So I went to the 17th Judicial Circuit's dependency courts, dependency guardian ad litem training program, and did that. And that's over a course of a few weekends. And so that was sort of where I got my background to begin doing this. In addition to that, as a litigator, of course, I received guardian ad litem reports, reviewed them, and started to familiarize myself with guardian ad litem work.
That makes sense. So how long have you been doing work as a guardian ad litem?
I believe that I got started in 2018, somewhere around there. I started in 2018, once I started to have this great realization of what I really wanted to do. And now most of my practice is guardian ad litem work, as opposed to litigation.
So almost an obvious answer, but I still want to ask. So then what is your experience with doing guardian ad litem work? What's it like for you? You know, what do you like about it? Is it fulfilled that interest that you've kind of realized through your experience of being a family law attorney?
It can be, there is there are a lot of emotions that a guardian ad litem, or at least me, that I experience as a guardian ad litem. At times it can be extremely fulfilling. At times it can be extremely sad. You know, when you sit down with a child and you ask questions about their family, and they start to cry, or they tell you their experiences, and or when you hear some of the stories from either parent about the things that have been done to children, those things can be very sad. And and at times it can be, if you're really invested, you can be very worried about children, at moments when there are exigent circumstances and things of that nature. So, but for the most part, you know, getting to having the opportunity to go to court and represent what is in the best interest of a child, um, in a nasty litigation, um, it feels, it feels like the right thing to do. It feels like a job well done. You know, when everyone's done testifying, and it feels like you're on the right side of things.
Right. So it's rewarding in that to that end of being able to verbalize the needs, the interests, the best interests of the children. Um,
Correct.
so is it a good assumption to make that a guardian ad litem in almost all cases would be hired only in cases where there's extreme conflict and high conflict cases, or not necessarily? Like, you know, what's the scope of what guardian ad litem's typical work?
So not necessarily. Some cases, a guardian ad litem is appointed, and it's not necessarily, now as a guardian ad litem, I've been hired on a full spectrum of different types of cases for different types of reasons. um a lot of the time, you know, I find my role to be to place the court in the living room of the kids, so and to know exactly what's going on. So sometimes it's co-parenting difficulties, communication difficulties that are, you know, the at the center of it all. Sometimes there's substance abuse issues, sometimes there are psychological issues that may be going on. Sometimes there are, you know, various abuse allegations. So in the instance where a child is being abused, per statute, a guardian ad litem shall be appointed if requested. And so during, you know, I've served on in cases like those, where the allegations are quite serious in nature. But um, whenever there's significant contention between parents, even if that seems like it's a small issue, it can become really, really big to a child, looking at the circumstances. So it's not, it may seem like that's not an extreme case. It may seem like you know, not the most extreme of circumstances, but it may be, in some situations when there's significant alienation going on, or when the children are being exposed to a lot of um, adult issues, adult conversations, and they're torn.
Right.
So guardian ad litems can be appointed for a variety of reasons, in a variety of different types of cases, for a lot of families.
Got it. When you how though you're not a mental health, like when you come across cases where there's like, how do you have a scope or a way to assess for mental health, for substance abuse? Like, how does that come up in a case where you may be questioning that? Like do you know what I'm asking?
Yes,
I'm not articulating
yes.
this well.
I do know what you're asking, Tammy. So yes. So when there's concerns about mental health or substance abuse, I will look at various behaviors and activities. I'm not a licensed therapist or a psychologist, so I will sort of try to verify the whether or not the allegations levied against this other parent are true in nature, and if they would warrant concern to me, whereby I think where it's sufficient enough to where I think that good cause exists for me to ask for a psychological evaluation or drug testing.
Got it.
Sometimes I may have parents where um they when they're talking to me even, something seems impaired or something like that. And, so often in my investigations, I may tell both parents or one parent, you have 24 hours to report to have a substance or to have a drug test done, and if you don't, then, I may presume that it's positive. In some situations, when there is as a guardian ad litem and a non-mental health professional, although I don't have any license to practice medicine or anything like that, I can recognize when I'm looking at something that appears to be abnormal. And just knowing that some sort of psychological condition appears to be of a person appears to be abnormal, that would cause me to refer it to someone, to refer the case, to refer that parent to have a psychological evaluation to find out whether or not my concerns are, or the other parent's concerns as voiced, or, what have you, whether it's justified and if it's something that warrants treatment or not.
Right. Right. Because there also may be times where you don't necessarily see or have the scope to be aware of abnormal behavior because the person is able to present or mask different stuff. But if you have some kind like outside evidence or input, right, from the other parent or from other people that is giving you cause to question their mental health, then that would also be something that would trigger you to consider referring for psychological evaluation or something like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So because I get very involved in their lives and I talk to as many people as possible, before, because that's what's really important, as a guardian ad litem, is not just talking to the people that the parents want you to talk to, but also maybe some people that they didn't give you,
Right.
and finding, sort of doing that research and getting some of that information and hearing about various circumstances and having and seeing whether people tell the story the same way and if it was concerning or alarming. And in addition to that, although costly, I do tend to like to be on cases for a while,
Mhm.
so that way, prior to trial, so that way, um, it's more difficult to mask certain behaviors,
Right.
if I'm on for a while, whereas when it's a short investigation and I have very little time, then, perhaps someone can mask certain behaviors, and that's always a concern when there's short investigations.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And that's good judgment in my opinion too. So from so now I want to like move into like life lessons, like things that you've learned thus far that, if you could help parents proactively, preemptively, proactively, what are some things that you wish parents knew or had insight, awareness of that they did better in entering a divorce process from all that you've seen and learned?
Well, I think that parents need to understand that while this is a huge change in their lives, this is also a huge change in the lives of the little ones too. So those little, these children that are undergoing this process as well, they may find themselves very conflicted. They're going through a lot of changes. Who's picking them up every day is changing. What house they're living in is changing from day to day. And mommy and daddy seem to not like each other so much anymore these days, or daddy and mommy, whatever it may be in that situation, in that family. And I've learned that a lot of the issues that I see in children stem from the way in which the adults are coping with the family law action. And while it may present as a child issue, it is not a child issue. Oftentimes it's an adult issue. And so it's the adults that need the coping skills to deal with their divorce, so that they understand that their children are not their confidants. Their children are not, so their children should not be exposed to the things that are going on in the family law action, and their children should in fact be shielded if at all possible in every potential circumstance available to do so. That there are too many parents who either overshare with their children. They may overshare with their children. They may, in addition to that, also fail to keep their children shielded from various events that happen in the case, whether it's at exchanges and things of that nature. Children, the need to say something negative to the other parent should not come before your need to shield your child in front of your child. And in addition to that, trying to keep as much normalcy as possible is key. Children that may be used to going to award ceremonies and having both parents present, well, the family may look a little different, but it's very important that the child still has that support from both parents. And I also think that as long as the relationship is healthy, children deserve both parents. It should never become, a family law action should never become a popularity contest, because that popularity contest can only hurt a child who loves both of their parents.
Some of the things that I heard you say were for parents to recognize that although it's a huge change in their own lives, it's a huge change for their kids, for their children, for them to have the awareness of that, that children are not their confidants, like to actually work towards shielding their children from the exposure of the conflict and from their own thought process, their own negative beliefs and feelings about the divorce process, that they should keep as much normalcy as possible. You said that's key, to try to help to minimize the transition for them of all the changes in their life. That's my interpretation of what you said. And also, what do I have here? How important it is for parents to realize the value of children having a relationship with both of their parents.
So long as both parents are healthy.
So long as both parents are healthy. Okay. So, and that's the hard part. I think that's where you often get caught up in, is trying to determine the degree to which parents are healthy in the relationship of the children when they're fighting so vehemently over parental rights or whatever that they're fighting over, that you end up getting involved. But I believe that if it would be fighting over some form of parental responsibility that would cause you to be involved in the process. No?
Yeah, it's that issue. Something about the children and their time sharing is an issue that has been brought to the court, and it's something that the court needs to decide upon. And so then a guardian ad litem is brought in.
Mhm.
Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's, it's very important for the parents to, when it comes to the health of the parents, I always say, parents, if both parents are healthy, now that doesn't mean perfect, because I don't think that there is such a thing as a perfect parent. Children are entitled, though, to parents that don't hurt them.
Mhm.
And so when I say healthy, that's what I mean. It's important that they have a relationship with both parents, so long as both parents are not hurting them.
Right. Got it. Is there anything else you wish or think is important for parents to know when entering a divorce process and to avoid the pitfalls of getting somebody like you involved in the situation? Things that they should look out for and be diligent to do.
Well, I think that it starts from the beginning, when the decision is made to have to undergo this process, to go through with a divorce, to go through with a separation, to develop a plan early on as much as you possibly can for the children to have some semblance of normalcy, and to even sit down and have the conversation, perhaps whether in a therapist's office or or with the child, together, about the fact that although this is happening, in a child-friendly way, although, mommy and daddy, or mommy and mommy, or daddy and daddy are separating, um, doesn't mean that anyone loves you any less. And it starts from how the parents begin to treat each other from the beginning. And developing a plan can be very crucial to make sure that kids are not going long periods of time with an interruption in their lives, from someone that they miss and someone that they love very much, because that causes, children, in my experience, it causes children to become nervous, various things when it comes to some of the behaviors that I've seen, whether it's having children keep secrets, having children, trying to turn one child against another parent, or informing them too much about the actions that are going on or emotions that are happening. It really does take a toll on their personalities, and how secure they feel, and as well as, their level of just nervousness, overall nervousness and happiness. So it's very important to set some goals before everything gets started about what co-parenting should look like, moving forward, putting all adult issues aside. No matter how much you may dislike your co-parent, that is your co-parent, and your duty is not to one another, it may not be to one another, but it's to your child or children.
That's great. That is great advice too. And like one key thing I'm hearing from you is early on, like right from the beginning, planning out, being proactive, how you start through the process will set the tone. Yeah.
Yes, because one thing that a lot of people don't realize is our court system's overloaded right now, very much so. And so getting to a hearing to even just establish a temporary time sharing plan where, the child will be with mom or dad on this day or that day, that can take some time. And unfortunately, when I'm involved in family law litigation, I refer to this time period sometimes for some families as the wild, wild west,
Yeah.
because it is unfortunate, but children are seeing things like mom or dad racing to the school to pick them up, to try to beat the other one
Oh,
to the
wow.
school, to have overnights and things like that. So planning in advance can make a big difference, because imagine how confusing that is for a child.
Totally. That's, yeah. And the kind of messages that sends that would create so much anxiety and like insecurity of, am I not safe with one parent or the other parent? Like, what's going on? That kind of unspoken reaction, I can only imagine happens often if that's the case.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So early discussions, planning how to co-parent, realizing that the system takes a long time to catch up and to be able to enforce anything. It's really got to be about discussions and decisions as co-parents right from the get-go, with or without attorneys present, for you guys to navigate transitioning to two homes or co-parenting where one parent is on, the other is off, and vice versa. Like, however you work your situation, but that you have some kind of overt, clear plan you've talked about.
Right.
You know what I'm curious about in terms of training? Is it on the job experience, or is it training that you get on how you interview the children? And is there any sensitivity to how you interview the children? I'm just curious because you're, again, not a mental health person, but you're guardian ad litem and you have a specific role, and part of your role is going to be interviewing the children, right? So is there sensitivity training? Like, what is there to help protect kids?
So yeah, so it is a science within itself, and it honestly, it takes some getting used to, but there's a lot of things that, for example, I as a guardian ad litem do, that I've learned have been successful. So first and foremost, there are various places that children may or may not feel comfortable talking, and trying to figure that out is very important. So having a child come to my office. Now, the front of my office is toys galore. We do arts and crafts and things like that. And usually for when it's the younger kids, I try to find out what their interests are from their parents first. So whether it's Pokemon or, Paw Patrol or what have you, maybe we'll do a paint by number. It's a lot of painting involved, or we make slime. But I don't talk about anything then. We play. And that's sort of for them to get to know me as someone that's safe. And I explain to them, and at their age level, what my role will be in their case, or in their situation rather. And even that, it all depends on the age level. But you definitely don't want to have children sitting at your conference table, giving an interview. But then you also have to, I'm sorry, you also have to take into consideration, when you go to, sometimes you have to be very alert as to whether or not the children are comfortable speaking at one parent's house over the other. Because that's something that I notice as well. When I go to their house, it's always, give me a tour, let's go on a tour. And then we look at, toys, and I gauge the child. And when they're ready to talk to me, children will let you know when they're ready to talk, and they have ways of letting you know that they're not ready to talk about certain things. So it all depends. And also you have to be mindful of whether it's a small house, if they feel like their parent can hear them, if they, those sorts of things.
Wow. So
So
that sounds like a lot of on the job training experience that has taught you, given you guts on how to navigate interviewing and being with kids in their space and learning from them, their perspective on things. Yeah,
yes,
got it.
yes.
If you could help kids through the divorce process? If your focus was helping kids, what would you want them to know? What would be important messages for you to share for kids in entering a divorce process?
Every family is different. And so for when it comes to that, my message to different children would be different based on their family. Unfortunately, in some situations, although I would love to tell children that it's going to be okay, I don't always know that it's going to be okay. And so but I will do my best to make sure that it's okay, or as okay as it can be. But when it comes to children and giving them advice, it's really sort of difficult to say because a lot of the issues are grown-up issues that are impacting them. And so a lot of my advice would really more so be directed toward their parents.
Right. But they cannot control what their parents do. And so assuming that there's damage being done, is there things that you would like just from that vantage point? Like I hear what you're saying. It's really the parents need to be more diligent at protecting their kids, being proactive at co-parenting, and recognizing the value of the relationship of both to the extent that they're healthy. That's important. But knowing that the world is not perfect and your parents are far from perfect and going through a divorce brings upon all these things that you've seen, what could you say? What would you say to kids? Or what do you think is important for them to know? I'm just trying to push you a little further, but you know, knowing that it's not necessarily going to be okay. So how do they navigate that?
Well, oftentimes if I'm concerned about a child and I think that they will need to have a space after I'm no longer on the case, because you've got to remember I'm only there for 30 days after the final judgment has been entered. I typically will, if I think that there's an ongoing need, I will recommend therapy, and I will encourage that child to make sure that they are expressive, honest, and that they have an outlet, and that outlet, they are as open as they can be and as transparent as they can be, so that they can sort through the various issues that are going on, so that they can understand them at their level with a mental health professional and digest it. So I guess if there are any parting, words for the kids, if that's something that's going on, for them, I want to make sure that I at least put in place some situation where there's a mandated reporter they can talk to, and I encourage them to be fully open with that
Right.
person.
So reach out for help. Have a safe space to be able to process your feelings when you don't necessarily have a safe space with your home, with your parents. They're not necessarily capable to support you all the time. That's good. I also think listening to you when you first started talking about, well, every family is different. I think that in itself is a helpful message for kids to normalize the fact that their unique situation is unique, but it's like, but everybody's situation is so unique. You know what I mean? Every family is so different that it's really hard in many ways to compare your situation. Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. I would also talk about and try to normalize grief and like that, helping them to transition through dealing with the loss of what was, and and the benefit of what can be, working towards the future. Like I think about the divorce support groups we've done for kids and the kind of messages that are important to share. But okay, so let me transition to one last thing, which is we know each other, you and I, because of the collaborative process. So it was through, I don't even know how, was it an FACP conference that we met? I think that's where I first met you, or we started working together random through the pro bono project. One of the two, I cannot remember.
One of them.
Whichever one it was. Yeah, because I can't remember. But so just curious about your thoughts on the collaborative process. How long have you've been in the marriage family law field for how long?
Since 2015. Since 2015.
So 7 years. So, you've had some decent experience under your belt. And collaborative, when did you learn about collaborative?
So I actually learned about collaborative when I was in law school. There was a collaborative family law course in law school at Nova. So I took it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I knew about collaborative then, and then I went and got trained, I believe, in 2019.
So, but this pro bono case that we're on, this is one of the very first, right? So this is not the most ideal case in the sense that, the investment of the clients, it's not they sought out the collaborative process. They were presented an option and it was free with attorneys. And so that's a great option. But have you had any other cases since? Or are you on any other cases like since then? No, not yet.
No, not yet.
Okay. So you've got some inside experience, but not too much of the collaborative process. You've certainly got a lot of training behind you in terms of collaborative, which is awesome. So I'm just curious, as a family law attorney that's been in the field for a while, seeing what you've seen, what your perspective is of collaborative so far, with the good and the bad. I mean, we're on a case that I would say is not ideal as a collaborative case for the reasons I stated, but yeah, I'm just curious, what's your perspective on the collaborative process?
Well, my perspective is more so as a guardian ad litem. I think I think that the collaborative process is wonderful in the sense that people do not, when they seek a divorce or when they start a family law action, they don't necessarily realize the time, the money, how much it's going to, how many hearings, or how much it's going to drain them, potentially in both resources and their overall well-being and all of that. And the pressure that is on someone who is in active, ongoing family law litigation. So, in my opinion, that takes a toll on a person who is also trying to parent a child and who is also trying to be a good co-parent. It's like, I've taken co-parenting classes just to see, what's going on in there. And I'll never forget, there was one gentleman who stated it's hard because every time I think we made progress, a motion gets filed with nasty things about me. And then, I revert back to how I feel about this whole process. And so the collaborative process, first of all, I also think, well, let me back up. I also think that people don't realize that if you have a trial, you're in front of a judge who listens to, maybe they're with your family for a day in that courtroom, maybe they're with your family for a week, or somewhere in between, or sometimes longer. But they're only listening to the things that can come in, the things that the rules of evidence permit. And they're making judgments and determinations for your family that will last you perhaps throughout, until until your children are 18 and beyond, potentially, in certain circumstances. And so in collaborative, the thing that I like very much about that is that you can actually customize these things. You have the power. You have the power, your family has the power to sit down and customize a plan that works for you and uh, your children, that is sort of curated to fit your family by various professionals, including a mental health professional, including, having the benefit of counsel, having the benefit of a forensics accountant. There's all of these various people that play a role in helping you get to the end, and you get there at a pace that is more appropriate for your family. What a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of actions actually end at mediation. Well, mediation is about 8 hours of your day, or maybe 10, 11, one day. Whereas collaborative sets out various meetings upon various topics, and you can be prepared for that topic. And if we need to take a break, we can take a break, and all of those things. Whereas, at mediation, by the end of the day, if your case settles that way with a mediator and 2 attorneys, you might be exhausted by the time that you're filing something. You might not be entirely certain about what you're filing, or what you're signing, because you're so tired, and maybe you've lost your will to keep going and negotiating. And so there's so many various things about this that the collaborative process is customized to work for families in these various situations, that it addresses issues, side issues, and everyone feels heard, and it's a team like atmosphere, trying to develop a plan for your children and your future. And kids, in my opinion, are hurt a lot less in a team like atmosphere, where everyone's held accountable, everyone talks about things as issues arise. You get relief a little bit quicker sometimes. There's a lot of benefits.
Yeah. You said hurt a lot less, right? Not heard. Hurt.
Right. Hurt a lot less. Hurt.
Yeah.
They're in the process.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. Well, is there anything else from the standpoint of a guardian ad litem and the experience you've had? Because that is a huge portion of what you do, and it sounds like the labor of your love, that you want to share, that you would want people to know that I haven't asked you.
I just want people to know that even though, and I can't emphasize this enough, even though divorce is a very difficult time for anyone, no matter what age, no matter where you are in life, no matter what's going on, aside from that. But we have to remember that it is the children that matter the most in this situation, because they are defenseless, and they rely on us as grown-ups to make sure that they're okay.
Yep, that's great. I appreciate that. And that's a very powerful and big statement, and definitely an interest, I think, for all of us that are in this field, is motivated to protect families, and especially kids, because they are most vulnerable. So I'm grateful for your time, and like for you sharing your thoughts and experience and wisdom as a guardian ad litem. It's good conversation.
No, thank you for having me.
It's awesome. Yeah, thanks. All right. Take care, everybody.